Hello everyone, my name is Al Parsai. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I teach immigration consulting at Ashton College. I'm also the author of the book called 88 Tips on Immigration to Canada, which is available on Amazon websites. Today, I would like to talk about an interesting subject, which is a startup immigration to Canada. But let me explain to you first that the picture that you are seeing behind me, it's actually Yonge Street in Toronto. It was claimed at one point that it is the longest street in the world, but what you see here is probably an event because they have shut down the street and people are walking. Normally you don't see it like that. It's full of cars. Okay, without further ado, let's talk about the startup visa immigration. When you want to immigrate to Canada, you have three major options defined under Section 12 of the Immigration Act. You can apply under family reunification, like being sponsored by your spouse or children, under economic class, and under refugee programs. Further to that, if you look at the economic class, we can divide economic class into two major groups. One group is called one group is called skilled workers, and the other group is called business immigrants. Skilled workers are those people who immigrate to Canada because of their work experience, because of their age, knowledge of English or French, or because of their level of education. But when you focus on business class, it's more about business people. And we can divide it into two major groups. One group is called the self-employed class. The other group is a startup visa. Self-employed class are athletes or artists who are self-employed or who are known at the world level and they want to immigrate to Canada. I already explained self-employed class in a previous video, but today I would like to focus on the startup visa. A little bit of history though. Initially, we had some other business immigration options to Canada. One of them was called the Investors Program. The other one was called Entrepreneur Class. Unfortunately, both options seem to be not that much successful. And that's why at one point of time, actually a long time ago, around 6 years ago, the government of Canada decides to shut down those programs. And eventually, they even closed the majority of the applications that they were submitted under those programs. But then later, they came up with the idea of an innovative method of immigration to Canada called Startup Visa. They ran a pilot project for 5 years. And in those 5 years, a group of 130 applicants managed to immigrate to Canada under that program. The total number of people who immigrated, that means the main applicant and the family members, was roughly around 300 people. Despite the low number of people who immigrated under this program, the government of Canada considered that a success, and they said that they are willing to continue accepting applicants under this program, which is a startup program. So here we are. The startup program is a permanent program, so let me explain it to you. The first thing first, you need to know that the startup program is for innovative people. So you need to have an innovative idea, and hopefully that can be run in Canada and turn into the next Google or Apple. And that's the idea behind the startup visa. The government of Canada does not have the authority and knowledge base to know who is innovative, who is not. That's why they have designated certain organizations to deal with this matter. In other words, when you apply under the startup program, first thing first, you need to get approval from a designated organization. If that designated organization issues a letter of support for you, signs a commitment letter with you, then you may apply for immigration to Canada under the startup program. Those designated organizations are divided into 3 major groups. Let me explain those groups. The first group is called venture capital funds. A venture capital fund is like this. Imagine a bunch of wealthy people or wealthy organizations. They deposit their money in a single account. So now we have an account, a huge account that has been fed by several people and organizations. One person or organization will be in charge of that fund. Now you, as an inventor or as an innovative person, you will approach that fund manager and you pitch your idea to them. If they like your idea, they will say, okay, we like your idea, but under these conditions, we are willing to invest in your idea. The government of Canada doesn't care that much about the conditions the venture capital fund imposes on you. What they care about is that the venture capital fund needs to invest at least 200,000 Canadian dollars in your idea. So you need that commitment from the venture capital fund to invest at least $200,000 in your idea. If they do, then you may apply for a startup visa. Not any venture capital fund may invest in your idea. In fact, you need to pick only those venture capital funds that are already approved by the government of Canada. And the list is up there on IRCC website. I have also published an article on my website with a list of those venture capital funds. If you are watching this on YouTube, I have a link down below. You can click on that link and see the list of approved designated organizations and especially venture capital funds. The second group of designated organizations is called an angel investors group. What is an angel investor group? In an angel investor group, what we have is a bunch of wealthy people organizations, but this time they do not share a fund together. They are just members of that group. Now, if you have an innovative or good idea, you present the idea to this group of people through that angel investor group. And if one of them or several of them, it doesn't matter, accepts to invest in your idea, then you may apply for a startup visa. The minimum amount of commitment by one of the members of that angel investor group needs to be at least $75,000. So it's a lot less than a venture capital fund. And of course, they may impose some limitations on you, or they may have some expectations from you. So for example, they may ask for certain percentage of the ownership of the business, or they may ask you to give them royalty or a combination of both or other expectations. Okay? Now keep in mind that for a foreign investor or innovative person approaching a venture capital fund in Canada or an angel investor group in Canada and get a positive response from them is very slim. Don't count on it that much. But yet, if you have very good background, business background, education background, knowledge base about the product or service or idea that you have, and you can pitch it to any of these groups and they accept it, good for you. The third group of designated organizations is called incubators. Incubators are organizations that will incubate your business. In other words, they help your business to grow. So what they do could be, for example, helping you with setting a budget plan, or helping you to set up a marketing plan, or maybe helping you to meet with potential buyers, potential suppliers, maybe help you to have speaking engagements, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, an incubator takes several steps to help your business grow. Obviously, to commit to that, they may ask for a portion of your business, maybe they ask for royalty, or maybe they ask for you to pay them money. So unlike the other two groups, this group is not expected to invest in your business, but it is expected that they accept your business for the purpose of incubation. Just like the angel investors groups or VCs, here we also have a limited number of organizations that are approved by the government of Canada to be incubators. Other than these, of course, we have lots of incubators in Canada. Not all of them are accepted, only those selected by the government of Canada. So that's the big step in application under a startup program. The biggest step is that you need to pitch your idea to one of these designated organizations and get a letter of acceptance and a commitment letter from them. And that's why thinking, oh, I have a great idea, let me apply under a startup visa, that's a dream. In reality, you need to have a great idea, but you also need to prove that this idea will work to those organizations. Okay? So this is a business immigration. That means that you want to start a business. But not every business qualifies for a startup business. A qualifying business for a startup visa, they need to meet certain requirements while you are negotiating with those organizations and after negotiating with them, and certain requirements upon immigration to Canada. So with the first step, which is while you are negotiating with those organizations, obviously you need to get the approval from one of those organizations. So that's number one. Number two is that the main or principal applicant who applies under this program needs to own at least 10% of the voting shares of this business. So when you create a business in Canada, especially if it's a corporation, everybody who is part of that business may have some shares. Those shares needs to be, it could be voting or non-voting. We just care about voting shares. In other words, having a say in the business. The principal applicant needs to own at least 10% of the voting share of the business. That's number one. Number two is that the collective percentage of the voting shares of the applicants or principal applicants and the designated organization in total needs to be at least 50% of the voting shares of the company. So in other words, let's say we have 3 principal applicants and an incubator. Now, each of those principal applicants say they have 15% share of the business, and the same thing for the incubator. The total will be 60%. Now, with the other 40%, whatever they do, the immigration authorities, they don't care. So what they want to see is that the shares of those principal applicants and the venture capital or the incubator or the angel investors in total be at least 50% voting shares of the business. So wait a minute, I told you 3 principal applicants. What does that mean? It means that you can have up to 5 principal applicants for startup visa. So when you are applying, it could be not just one person who is applying for a startup, but 2, 3, 4, or 5 people. Obviously, each of those 5 people, they have some dependent family members, but we are talking about the principal applicants. So you could have up to 5, it's not mandatory, but you could have up to 5 principal applicants, and of course, 1 designated organization, okay? And each one of these 5 people, they need to have at least 10% of the voting share of the business. And in total with this designated organization, they need to have at least 50% of the share of the business. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2, upon immigration, you need to convince the immigration authorities that each of those principal applicants, whether it's only 1 person or up to 5 people, they need to show that they have active role in managing and running that business. In other words, we are looking at, for example, the chief executive officer of the business, the chief operation officer of the business, the chief financial officer of the business, the chief technology officer of the business, those kinds of roles, okay? And they need to show that they can, and they are actually taking part in their roles. The second thing is that the main area of the business needs to be inside Canada. So in other words, this business, if you look at it, you say this business is a Canadian business. If part of the operation is being done outside Canada, that's okay. For example, if you're thinking about a production line, the design is done inside Canada, but the actual production could be outside Canada. What they are looking at the business is that the essential portions of the business are being handled inside Canada. And the third one is that, of course, that business needs to be incorporated inside Canada. We have different types of businesses in Canada, like sole proprietorship, partnership, or sometimes we have other types, but the one that they are looking for is an incorporated business, okay? An incorporated business. So we have the approval of the designated organization. We meet the requirements of the business in Canada. Can we apply? No, you need to have also to meet other things. One of them, and probably the most difficult one for some of the applicants under this group, is knowledge of the official languages of Canada. Canada has 2 official languages, French and English. You need to know at least one of them. And to prove that you know that language, you need to take a test that IRCC or the immigration authorities have approved that test. Currently, we have 2 tests for the English language and 2 tests for French language. So for English language, we have IELTS, and IELTS General is acceptable, and CELPIP General. And for the French language, we have TEF Canada and TCF Canada. In Canada, your knowledge of English is represented by something called CLB, or Canada Language Benchmark, which is from 1 to 12. So 12 is the most advanced person, 1 is the most basic person. You need to be CLB 5 or more under each ability: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So a minimum of CLB 5. For example, if you are taking the IELTS test, your reading score needs to be 4 or more to be considered a CLB 5 or more. And your speaking, listening, and writing needs to be at least IELTS 5 to be considered a CLB 5 or more. Okay? So that's number 1. You need to take one of those tests. The other issue is about your settlement funds. You need to show them that you have enough money when you come to Canada to cover your expenses for at least your expenses and your family expenses for a period of at least 6 months. And that is defined under something called low income cutoff, or LICO, L-I-C-O. And if you look up LICO 2020, or depending on the year you're watching this, I have written articles about them, and I'm pretty sure that you will find them on the first page of Google. You can see the LICO tables and find out if you can meet the minimum financial requirements or not. But frankly speaking, somebody who is applying under the startup visa is way more well off than the LICO thing. And because when you're negotiating with a venture capital, they expect you to invest in your business as well, most of the time. And that's why you need to show that you have enough money to convince them. But regardless, this is the minimum that the IRCC expects from you in your bank account or unencumbered funds that you can easily have access to and bring with you to Canada. Of course, you also can not be inadmissible to Canada. If you are inadmissible to Canada, you cannot immigrate. My session 2 of these videos talks about inadmissibility, so I'm not going to repeat that here. So if you meet all the requirements, at that point you may apply for a work permit under International Mobility Program, and that work permit helps you to relatively quickly move to Canada and start your business as quick as possible. At the same time of applying for the work permit, or maybe a little bit later, you can apply for permanent residency of Canada. Application for permanent residency under the startup program, to be honest with you, it's not very difficult. It's a bunch of forms and documents that you need to submit. The most difficult portion is getting those letters from designated organizations. If you get the letters from the designated organizations, then you may apply for permanent residency. If you are not inadmissible to Canada, you don't have major medical issues, those kind of things, then you can become a permanent resident of Canada. Upon becoming a permanent resident of Canada, you don't need that work permit anymore. But of course, the process for becoming a permanent resident could take a few months. That's why it's not a bad idea to apply for the work permit sooner for two reasons. First of all, you can reach Canada sooner, and also to prove to the immigration authorities that you are serious about running your startup in Canada. With that, I'm done with the topic of startup visa. I hope you see my previous videos as well, and also my future videos. Thank you very much for watching this video.